The head of the five-star movement in Italy, Beppe Grillo, has so far rejected calls by opponents Silvio Berlusconi and Pier Luigi Bersani to form a coalition government. Billionaire Berlusconi continues his trial on the numerous charges of corruption against him, and now the markets, along with the rest of Europe, want to know if the country is capable of forming a government soon. So how does Italy stand politically and financially 2 weeks on from the election? Well, joining me on the line is Chief Economist at Berenberg Bank, Dr. Holger Schmieding. Dr. Schmieding, thanks for joining me today. You've been keeping an eye on all this from an economist's standpoint. Could the political deadlock in Italy bring down the euro at all?
It's highly unlikely that anything could bring down the euro. The euro economy is fairly solid. It's in a recession, but looks set to get out of recession soon. Most of the tail risks in the eurozone have receded ever since the European Central Bank has made it clear that it would act as a lender of last resort if need be. But there is a tail risk, and that is now centered on Italy. If a country wanted to leave the euro because it does not like the conditions attached to euro membership, it could, of course, theoretically leave the euro, and Italy may have to ask itself this question.
Now, nationalising Italian banks, this is an idea championed by Mr. Grillo and his movement. In China, this has been more or less successful. Could it work in Italy?
No, I don't think it would be a good idea anywhere in Europe. Of course, banks that have failed need to be taken over and wound down in an orderly fashion. In that case, bank nationalization actually might work. But to simply take over the functioning parts of a banking system and have it run by bureaucrats, that suggests that we would have a much worse performance of the economy and the banking system. The German experience, for instance, is that after Lehman, the worst losses were in banks that were largely controlled by the government.
Some analysts I've spoken to have argued that the positive effects of quantitative easing on the markets is wearing thin. Moreover, consumers are not experiencing any real benefits. Could this be the right time for Italy to take back its monetary sovereignty?
Well, Italy is reaping serious benefits, not from quantitative easing, we do not have that in the eurozone, but from the European Central Bank's promise to do all it takes to keep every country in the euro. Italian borrowing costs over the last 9 months have come down, and there are signs that this is feeding through to a limited extent to households and companies having more access to bank credit. So for Italy to try to get out of the euro, have a complete collapse of the banking system, because deposits would of course leave the country ahead of any shift to a new weaker currency, and not have the European Central Bank as a backstop. For Italy, such a course of events would be a complete, utter disaster. So I do not think that Italy will seriously contemplate withdrawing from the protective umbrella of the European Central Bank and the euro.
What's the next key step for Italy going forward then, and what can we expect from a financial standpoint?
Well, as of next week, when the new Italian parliament will have convened, as of next week, the Italian president will bang hats together and see if a government can be formed. If so, it will most likely be a center-left minority government backed by Beppe Grillo's people, that is the weird left in the upper house of parliament. If that does not come to fruition, and there's a very significant chance that this does not come to fruition, we might have either a temporary government, say with a mandate for up to a year to do a few things that Italy needs, or we might go for new elections in early June. There is significant political uncertainty in Italy, and new elections would be the scenario that could upset markets for a while if that were to come. So for financial markets, we need to watch Italy very carefully. It probably will go okay, but the tail risk of new elections possibly going wrong from a market standpoint, that tail risk does exist and is significant.
And of course, now that Mr. Grillo has been thrust into the limelight, he'd like to get rid of the old guard and bring in the new.
Well, changing the old guard for a new guard would not be a bad idea, but ditching the policies of Monti would be an extremely bad idea, because then Italy would lose the protective umbrella of the European Central Bank. The the rest of Europe would not support a country that is reversing the Monti austerity and reforms, and then Italy would have a serious crisis, much more serious than the crisis we would see elsewhere in the Eurozone. So it is a risk, but my impression is that Beppe Grillo may be saying a lot, but that the people who actually were elected for him, that they may be much more responsible and might act much more responsibly in Parliament, possibly backing a centre-left government than Beppe Grillo himself would do.
Thank you for joining me, Dr. Holger Schmieding. That's all for the moment here on Dukascopy TV. Join me next time, though. Goodbye.